What is wrong with Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord? Well, that, my friends, is a complex and divisive conversation to have. Yet today, that is exactly the conversation I plan to have with all of you. In my over 1200 hours in this game, over many playthroughs and challenges I've done on this channel covering content from Vanilla Bannerlord to some of the most in-depth mods I've played on any game. Strap in, grab your snacks and your bevos, and let's dive in to the discussion of if Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord is in fact a good game or a failed project. Now, I'm not going to start this video railing on a game that I've dedicated 3 years of my life to. That comes later. But on a serious note, I do really enjoy Mount & Blade Bannerlord 2, or at least I used to. And therein lies the problem, so I'm going to start by explaining what I believe to be some of the best parts of this game, before I potentially trigger my entire audience. Please don't hurt me. The first pro of this game is the massive 3D battles, of course. This is the best part of Bannerlord. Most players will tell you there's nothing better than when your massive unsullied army clashes with the Baratheon forces in the Game of Thrones mods, or when you're playing vanilla and the great Battanian armies descend upon your strong Imperial force of battle-hardened veterans. This is truly my favourite part of the game. The immersion, the clashing of shields and weapons, and the screams and cheers of warriors across the battlefield. There truly is no other game that can do this for you as well as Mount & Blade Bannerlord 2 can. So yes, the battles are a massive winner for the Mount & Blade franchise as a whole. And the other thing we have going for us is, well, the biggest of the Mount & Blade staples, the sandbox experience. While yes, you can go and you can do your quests to run around the map and discover the banner fragments that you then use to found your own kingdom or destroy the empire or unite it, there is truly nothing better than just doing what you want in a video game, in my opinion. As someone with ADHD that gets distracted, I love a game where me getting distracted still means I can do things. If I roam off halfway through a quest on a linear story-driven game, I'm stuck, I can't go back, I can't alter the story outside of what's programmed into it. But Bannerlord gives me that freedom, to make my own story, to craft these tales of a bandit who fought through the local tournaments, rose to prominence becoming a knight of great renown and influence, eventually rising through the ranks to obtain lordship in his own lands, raising armies and leading your own men. It is truly unique experience that only Mount & Blade as a franchise can offer. The sandbox is just one of the absolute best parts of this game. No one's going to argue that. The next thing I want to touch on is the immersion. As I've recently stated, it's great when you can call out orders in an army or fight head on with sword and shield in a shield wall, knowing that you are the commander of this battle, and you are the men that the warrior your men turn to for leadership, and you don't feel like a god floating in the sky, telepathically moving your men like this is Total War. You are feeling your sword smash against the enemy, being pushed back by the weight of the enemy formation, and that in turn makes the combat fun, and it makes it feel real. Makes it special. You're in the thick of it with your men. You hear their pain, their joy when you lose or win a battle, which in my opinion just adds a lot of depth to your soldiers as characters in your army and allows you to actually care when your men die. At least that's my experience anyway. Now the next part I want to touch on is the map. The map for Mount & Blade Bannerlord 2 is amazing, and no Bannerlord player can seriously look you in the eye and say the maps aren't gorgeous, and if they do, they are lying. Even more so at max graphics, if not a little demanding, but we will touch on that later. The rivers flow, the trees blow in the wind, and when this game showed these things off in 2016 onwards, No one would deny it looked gorgeous, and these are the things that gave the community this hope and this loyalty to the game, Bannerlord itself, that the team was dedicated and we knew Tailworlds... Sorry guys. We knew Tailworlds would really listen and make a game that would be alive and well for years to come.
And now for something completely different.
Alright everybody, we've arrived at the part of the video where I make everybody really upset. However, if you have played as long as I have, most, if not all of these points should make a lot of sense, and if you are new to the game, some of these won't impact you. However, at least half will, so keep this in mind moving forward. These are my opinions, and as much as I am reasonably well informed on the game, you are free to have your own opinions about the game. Of course, now, on to the triggering. All Bannerlord players have felt it. You just finished your first playthrough. Your character has everything this world has to offer. Your kingdom, or the one you serve, owns the map. You have the best gear, horses, limitless gold, maxed out armies, workshops and cities, gaining you taxes and more gold, giving you an infinite supply of money. And now, it's time to start again. Here lies the problem. Without the use of mods, vanilla Bannerlord became very boring very quickly. While the game's original constant streams of updates were once keeping the game fresh and polished, now you're replaying the game and gathering the banner pieces and all that good stuff all over again and again and again. Now the main issue here is about playthrough 3 and 4. The game very much is just boring and you're not playing anymore. You're just going through the motions, and the game's difficulty levels don't do a whole lot to help liven things up. I exclusively play on the hardest settings this game has, and have done so the entire time I've had the game. Yet I find myself using countless mods to improve the AI and combat, or enemies, units to make them more challenging, like with the realistic battle mod, and stagger bars being added into that with combat reworks. Yet even then, the game feels dull. The replayability for this game at first seems so good. Yet very suddenly, you may come to realize it's just the same events with a different character, with the same traits and skills. Moving on to my next issue. I know I just roasted it, but we are far from done, and the next one isn't as big of an issue. Well, that's a lie. It's more of an issue that will take less time to explain, and even that might not be completely accurate. The basic gist is, Tailworlds does not communicate. Now I know what you want to say, but Lord Whitecross, they do the community Tales every month. But it's not enough. If you played the game on release, we were constantly kept in the loop. We knew of the issues because Tailworlds announced what issues were in the game presently, to their knowledge, and actively kept us up to date on what's being fixed. That meant some weeks we had 3 updates in a row. Not that I think that should be the standard, but it truly showed how much Tailworlds cared about us as a community and showed that they were listening to community feedback. Yet, now we get told what's coming, and a lot of what I've seen from the company in the last year has been, well, in my own opinion, ideas they stole from the modding community, more than them actually listening to what we were saying. Good examples of this, in my opinion, were the broken siege towers that one modder fixed in his spare time and gave to the community. And this was a big deal, as sieges were so broken for so long, you just didn't build siege towers. You only had ladders, because the siege towers just didn't work. No one climbed them. And you'd just lose battles just because you had a siege tower instead of a ladder. It was not a good time. And this was fixed by a modder. And eventually Tailworlds released their own fix to sieges, which was the exact same thing the modder had done, realistically. And the next instance I want to give you of this is the weather mod. A lot of you may know about this one already. We got the weather mod, I'd say a fair few months prior to the actual update of weather in Bannerlord. And they started telling us they were going to do all this crazy stuff with weather, and I'd been using a weather mod for about 2 months at that point. Another example in my mind that Tailworlds weren't listening, because if they were listening, they could have implemented this a lot sooner. Players have been asking for this a lot longer than a few months ago. So the fact that they've only added it now that someone in the modding community has fixed the issue with their game just shows me that they're not trying to help the community at all. And the worst part about all of this is the modders are driving this game right now. A lot of the things that the mod teams are adding, the Realm of Thrones, the Warhammer mod, the Japanese Sokuo mod that's coming out, Star Wars mod, Lord of the Rings mod. There's so many mod teams that are making active work to make this a good game. And they're putting in what I feel is more effort than the game's development team. Which is horrendous, honestly. It's one of my biggest issues with the game. And they basically kind of screw over the modding team a lot, because a lot of their updates, their community tales, end up with these tiny little updates that don't fix a whole lot, but what they do is they make it so that a lot of the work that the mod team has done on that patch of Bannerlord now has to be transferred onto a new patch. This may not seem like a very complex task, but it's time consuming, and a lot of these teams use so much of their spare time on this game already. The fact that they're then forced to add extra hours in, it feels like the mod teams are working full time to keep the game running like it's their job. And while yes, a lot of them enjoy doing it, it's not something they should have to actively try and fix as much as they want to just improve. They shouldn't have to fix issues in the game. That shouldn't be their job. Modders exist to make what is already a game into a better game, not to make an unfinished project into a game, if you're still with me. Alright, and you thought I was done. I'm not. Okay, you knew this one was coming. 2 years of early access, not counting the closed beta, which was first tested in 2016. Now, I'm all for games making sure they get it right. That's fine. But the game was not ready on release. It was riddled with crashes. You could barely play a session without crashing. And while Tailworlds worked hard to fix these crashes, that's basically what they spent the 2 years of early access doing, making the game not break when people played it. I would have honestly preferred the game had had one massive big delay, simply due to the fact that in the 2 years they spent hotfixing the game into a playable state. Not an amazing state, a playable state. They left out things like modding tools. You guys remember mods, right? You know, the one thing that made OG Mount and Blade community so diehard loyal was the insane moddability of the game. That's true for Bannerlord. It is a goldmine of modding potential, and yet Tailworlds has repeatedly screwed mod teams over time and time again. On top of not releasing enough content themselves, they handicapped mod teams by updating the game with most of the time irrelevant changes that do nothing but break every single mod. And if you've ever installed these mods, you know how annoying this can be if you haven't turned off auto-update, and it breaks your save when you need to update to a new version, making all the work you put into your Bannerlord character wasted. Tailworlds knows that mods keep their game alive, yet consistently find ways to slow the progress of the teams working day and night to make this game what it should have been all along. So to answer the question, is Bannerlord a good game? Plainly, no. Without mods, the game very quickly runs out of content. It's no longer enjoyable, at least for me. This could change with DLC content and more collaboration with mod teams, but until that time comes, I'm afraid Vanilla Bannerlord is a bad game at its core. And it truly makes me sad to say it, because I love this game. And I've been one of its most staunch defenders, but that era is over. And now, we move on to better things.